Hey guys, and welcome to a new modding tutorial. And today we are talking about how to write custom ponders for your Create add-on and how to make them feel like they're straight out of Create themselves. And for everybody not knowing what I'm talking about, a ponder in Create is one of the most fundamental ways to teach a player something. So it is in this kind of setup inside of here. So if you have never written a ponder, that is no problem. I will take you from zero to everything today. So to start writing a ponder, we need to actually think about what we want to create a ponder about. Because this is like my example mod I'm having here, I don't really have real use cases inside of here. So we're just gonna write a ponder about the desk bell today. For writing ponders, you actually need to build something in-game. So we're gonna build out the scene in here. When building a ponder scene, you need to think about how big it should be. The base plate is always a square, so this would be now a base plate with the size of 5. So when writing ponder scenes, it's good to just use F3 to make sure that you align with the crosshair here. Because this will then actually align it correctly to the camera. So the camera views it like this. So if you like build something which is like 2 blocks tall and like build something behind it, the camera like might not see it. And then you have to like rotate the scene. But if you do it like this, then it is a little bit easier to do. Before writing a scene, you kind of need to think about what you actually want to show inside of the scene. And there's a few core principles in Create or for Create ponders you should definitely follow when building out ponder scenes. So before you want to start building your ponder, you should think about how to structure it. And for this, I have made this small cheat sheet here, which I use to write ponders. In my head, I have now written it actually to something. And when writing a ponder, you're kind of like the director of a scene, and you need to have that in mind. So you want to show something to somebody else, and they don't have the same knowledge as you have. So you're trying to build a knowledge transfer. And there are two kind of ponder ways. The first one is the problem solution solving. So you start by showing them a problem. So in my pipes and physics mod, I show, for example, a hole that the fluid cannot flow up. Then I show the solution, which would then be like inserting a pump into the system. And then I explain why. So then I say fluids on its own cannot move up. So you need a pump to move it there. And that's then the ponder scene. You can then also extend on this and like saying showing like some specialities about this certain feature you want to show using a problem. But that's how it works, and then you repeat it by showing the next problem that your pondered item block can solve. The other one is if you want to show off a feature, for example for the decibel, I'm showing the pondered block first, and then I'm showing how to interact or use it. So I will show like a right click on the bell and then show what happens if you right click it, so that the user knows that they can right click it. And then I explain why they can click on it or what happens when they click on it, etc. And then I repeat this with the next kind of feature I want to have. And here you can also kind of bundle a few things into the same one as long as like the same feature. So for example, if I can right click the bell, I can show in one scene like what the bell is doing when you right click on it. If it's also like a redstone signal, I can put it in the same scene. But like if I left click it and I don't know, it explodes, I should maybe put it into a different scene or like handle it like differently inside of that scene, like give it like a special role so that they're kind of like independent of each other, the left and the right click. Or maybe, I don't know, if I place a bell on a contraption, something happens, then this would be a different scene I would show it off. And then also there's like core principles. Delays are your friends. Give yourself a bit of time in your scene, don't rush it. The players need their time to understand what you're showing off. Only one problem or multiple functions / extras per scene, so that you don't show like of 10 different things in one really big scene, split up into multiple smaller ones, easier to understand, easier to repeat. And then try to explain most things showing a problem, and then the solution is, in my opinion, the best way to go ahead. So just show what the block can solve and then why you should use that block. Okay, so that's the scene I'm gonna use now, and what you're gonna do is gonna use this gradient quill. You're gonna select the scene with everything inside of it, and then you're gonna give it a name. So in my case, I'm just gonna call it desk_bell. And then you're gonna click on save. You don't need to upload it. we'll just upload to the server, so it's single player, doesn't really matter. And this is our base scene, so we will see us in code in a second. So now we are inside of the code, and I've just opened the create mod template you can download and view on my GitHub. So I will be using this as an example. I have some uncommitted stuff in here, but I will commit them before I release this video, so you can check them out. So if you're using to build the ponder scenes, your own mod interface, for example, by running it up here, you can just grab the schematics out of your run folder, go into the schematics, and then you can see here is the example ponder schematic. There should also technically be my other, yep, here, Dispel. So sometimes you have to do reload from disk in IntelliJ, so that shows you. And what we're now gonna do is, if we are inside of the resources, you can see the assets, and there's a ponder folder with the example ponder. And we're just gonna copy and paste the NBT inside of here. So the NBT is kind of the truth of where things are. And I can recommend going into your IntelliJ plugins and then downloading the Minecraft NBT support. It's a quite nice plugin. So then you can double click the NBT and then you can see your blocks and your palette, and it can be helpful writing ponders. So inside the new ponder, you can see there are 2 files and another package called util. And inside of here, what we care about is we have the example ponder plugin, which is the main way where we're gonna build out ponder scenes. One issue we might have now is that because we're wanting to add a ponder to a base create block, it might not work. I will just see if it works, and if not, then yeah, we can continue. But before we go into the register scenes, we are gonna go a small deep dive on how ponders work actually inside of the code. So in here, I have now built something which a ponder is basically you have a block and an item, and in that registry you just saw, we just gonna assign a ponder scene to this block and this item. And the ponder scene is just, you have, basically it's just a set of instructions. So you have instructions, and those things then continue for like ever inside of your ponder scene, and they're handled one by another. And this is what builds the whole scene then. So it's a set of instructions we're going to build inside of the code. And when the code loads, the first thing it's going to do is going to grab the NBT we assigned it, or to say it better, the schematic we gave it, load it into the ponder renderer, and then execute every instruction we have given it inside of the code. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a new scene. So let's just call it desk bell scene inside of here. But because a scene is not a class, it is a function. We are not going to call it decibel scene. We have multiple scenes inside of here. So I'm just going to call it decibel scenes. And then to write a scene, you're just going to make a public static function, which can be a void. And I'm normally just calling it like whatever I'm showing off. So if I'm like doing the intro of like an item, I'm just going to call the scene intro. And then you're going to throw in the scene builder, which you're just going to call scene builder. And then what you also want to throw into here, I need to actually check real quick, is the scene building util. So the scene building util, and you can just call it util or whatever. And then to register the scene, we're going to go into here and then just write helper.for components. And then we're going to use all blocks, but now from create, so it will look a little bit weird. And then we're going to use the deskbell.getID. And then we're going to add in the storyboard, which we are then giving the schematic path I will show in a second. And now we're just going to use the deskbellscenes.intro we have just defined. And then everything is fine. The schematic path is by default already completely set up for you, so we can just write desk_bell. But if you have like nested it inside of a folder, be sure to add in the proper nesting inside of the path here as well. So now we have this scene, which is called intro. And if we now launch the game, we can check if it has worked. I'm not sure if it will work because we're adding something to a create block, and that can be weird. Yeah, and now we've given it a ponder, and if you open up the ponder, we can see nothing. And that's exactly what we want to have here. So for writing the ponder, I can recommend extending the class ponder scene. So this is a class I have written over a long time writing pipes and physics, and it just gives you like a lot of helper functions to write your stuff, which makes it a little bit easier. So to do this, we're just going to use the extends function up here and just going to say this is a ponder scene. Now what we can do is we can use the function called setup scene. And in here, we're just going to use the size of 5, and then we're going to pass in the scene itself, which we called builder. So I would recommend just calling this scene, because this is essentially what it is. So what we want to do actually before we write anything is giving the scene a title. So in here you can give it a scene ID. I would just code like decibel underscore intro, so it's like clear what it is. And then you can give it a title. I'm just going to call it the decibel inside of here. So to actually show something inside of your schematic, you will need to create a selection. And the selection is just like a selection of blocks or items or whatever, or like an area. And I would recommend if like you're on this modding version to just use the var keyword, because then you don't really have to remember what types they are. We can now make the bell, and we can, or the bell position, because now we want to have the positioning of the bell. So now we need to kind of think about that these utils have all their own coordinate system. These utils, sorry, I'm seeing the code here. These ponders have their own coordinate system and starting at 0, 0 in the bottom corner. So this bell is sitting in the middle, which would then be 2, 2. But it's sitting at like in block elevated, so it would be 2, 1, 2 for its position. And to this, you can use the util function, and then you can use the grid, and you can use, this is a function, not an attribute. And we can use the grid function, and then just say 2, 1, 2. Okay, now that we have the position of the bell, we're going to create a selection of it, or we can directly show it. So to show it, we can use the reveal command inside of here. And we have to always pass in the scene where we want to reveal something, then the selection. And to create the selection, I'm just going to call it bell selection. And there's now a few functions you can use. So if you're using the util, there is this select function. And then we can pass in the position, the bell pos, which is probably the easiest way to do it. We can then pass in the bell selection inside of here. And now we can give it a direction. And I would just recommend using down. This is like the from where it is then flying into the scene. I will show it to you in a second. And one really cool thing about ponders is they're super nice to debug. So if we are now starting our game inside of debug mode instead of the normal run configuration, we can hot reload the scenes. Whoop, and ponder the decibel. You can now see the bell showing up here as you wanted it to be. And now the cool thing is, if you want to have a delay in between the scene and the decibel showing, I would recommend using the idle because it's inside of ticks, and it makes it a little bit easier because also Create uses all of its things in ticks. And you can say, okay, wait here for 10 ticks and then do this code. And now that we've done it, we can just click on code changed. And if we go back in here, you can now see there's a small delay in between those two. I would recommend doing those. Continue on writing this scene. So what I would now normally do is add in like a really small explanation text because we don't really have a problem we want to solve with the scene. So if we just type in text, you can see there's a few functions here. And normally what I like to use is the show text above function, which is quite helpful for here. So the first thing you always have to pass in is the scene, sometimes the util. Put in some text, yeah, let's use this text here, who cares, and then give in the bell pos. And sometimes when you now change the code and execute it, you will now see the text, and we have the text here, but the text is like this weird text, like it doesn't actually give you the correct text inside of here. To get the correct text inside of the ponder scene, what you need to do is pretty easy. You just need to run your data generator again. So you can use the Gradle task for this. You can double click on then running the data generator. And when it is finished running, you can check out your language file inside of your resources, and it will then have all of the ponder scenes text already generated for you. So normally what we want to do is so like that the text can actually like stay there for a few ticks. So we can just use a scene like idle, put in like 60 ticks, and then continue. But there's also another function we have inside of here, which is the narrate function. So if we call narrate, you can now see, okay, we need a few other things, but we can use the narrate above function, which is exactly the function we want to have here. So let's use narrate above, which is just a replacement. And what you can see is the same function. It just calls show text above, but it also automatically waits for us with a scene.textStation. If you want to change those, just go up here. It's 80 by default. So now we want to show the user that they can right click the bell. And this becomes a little bit hard to do because my helper here only has this show click with item. But what we can do is we can just copy and paste the code we are doing inside of here. And I can see this becomes a little bit harder to do because we have now to input a few more things. So first of all, there is this pointing function. And we're just going to use the pointing.left functionality. We're going to point it at the top of the bell pause. And then if we are using top off, then we should use down. Then the duration, I would just use the default delay. And then we can just say we want to show a right click without any item. And now what we're going to do is we're going to use the overlay. We're showing the controls. Then at which position is we're going to use the vector helper function. And then we use the top of the bell position. And if you now reload this code again and go in game and then open up the ponder, you can then see we're having this text here, it's being shown. And then after text has been shown, we can see the right click on the bell itself. Okay, so now let's write the rest of the ponder. I will not show you how I write the ponder, but keep in mind it is maybe for you not really interesting, or you don't really want to copy it one-to-one because you're gonna write your own ponder in the end. And this is maybe just like giving you ideas on how I structure those to make them feel in a good way. What I like to do when I have like something where I show the user something like visually, before I continue, I like to idle the scene for like 7 ticks. And that's also something Create does quite a lot. So yeah, I think this is quite nice to do. Then the next thing I want to do is I'm gonna write myself a small helper function down here. This function is gonna ring the bell for me and actually play the sound effect so that it is, I don't know, feels a little bit more immersive to scene. So I'm gonna pass in the scene builder down here, and then I'm also gonna pass in the block position that we have here from the bell. We can also call it bell position. Let's call it bell position. I think that might be a little bit clearer. And what we're going to do to actually have the bell ring, we're going to use the modify block entity function. Oh, sorry, not modify entity. We want to use the modify block entity. Modify block entity. And what we have to do, we have to pass in the position of the bell, and now we have to give it a class. And in our case, this is then the desk bell block entity dot class. And now we can give it a consumer or like a function, which is gonna modify this class. And the good thing is that the desk bell block entity class already has a function that we want to use, and it's already here, which is the ding function. And this is the function which rings the bell. So this is kind of what we want to do. And then what we also do is we want to play a sound effect. So we can use the play sound helper function, giving it the scene, and then we're gonna use all sound events from create, and then we have something desk bell use. This sounds correct. So what we need to do now is when we're calling ring with the scene and now the bell position, we now have to wait here because this ring is gonna ring the bell, but the scene is gonna continue to the next instruction until we say it wait here until the ring has completed. So we need to check inside of the ding function from create how long it takes to ring the bell, or like how long the animation plays. Let's just wait for 20 ticks, and if it doesn't fit, we can still adjust it. So when waiting 20 ticks for the ring, and then we want to continue with the next thing. So this is like one section of our animation, of our ponder. I'm just gonna call it the right click to ring section. And now what we want to do is the redstone section. And in between sections, I just like to introduce an idle of something like 20 ticks, 25 ticks, 30 ticks, whatever feels good, but be consistent. Always use the same number. So yes, these are magic numbers technically, so feel free to put them into a variable. As for the redstone, I want to show the redstone dust one by one. And now when you want to show multiple blocks which are like adjacent to each other, you can do something cool to give it a bit of a better feeling. And it is to show one block after another. So what we can do here is write a small function for that, which uses a for each. So we're gonna iterate over each field we have inside of the selection. And then we're gonna reveal one after another. And then we want to wait like one tick, because otherwise they will still fall down at the same time. So this will then show off the redstone. And now we can do the same for the redstone lamp. Then let's take a look how it looks in game. Okay, so let's ponder the bell. And let's see, okay, this is the desk bell. And then we're gonna wait. We right click it, it rings, and then the redstone appears. Yeah, looks nice. Let's highlight the redstone section that we have. And for this, we also have a nice function, which is called highlight box. And we just use the scene. And then we have to pass in which area this box should be inside of. And we want to use the wiring selection. And then with a ponder palette, you can see these are all the colors that the ponders like to use. And for something like this, you can use like the output color. And for the duration, I'm just going to use the text duration here, because now I'm going to input a text with the narrate above functionality. Now we are waiting for this text to finish, but we want a small delay before we actually click it then. So let's use like, again, the magic 7. And now what we need to do is we need to toggle on the redstone manually. So if you would press it now, the redstone would not turn on. This is just something like how ponders work, like they don't actually tick correctly, or like the normal Minecraft world. So what we can do is we can use the world function, and then we can use the toggle redstone power, and we can input in which selection we want to turn a redstone. And in our case, it's the wiring selection, but also the redstone lamp. So we're gonna toggle on both of these selections. And then after we have toggled it, I think our redstone section is already done. So we can wait another 20 ticks for now and add in a comment here. And what we can do now is just we can click on code changed. It will apply the code changes. We can hop back into Minecraft and ponder the desk bell. And now we can see, okay, this is the desk bell. We will then right click it. It makes the sound effect. We show off the redstone. We show the desk bell, we produce a redstone when pressed. Okay, looks nice. And now when we press it, it turns on the lamp. Nice, seems to work as expected. For the last thing, I want to show off the deployer. So let's put in the deployer here. And for the deployer, I want to first of all highlight the deployer and its hand crank. And now we want to turn the deployer. So this is now a little bit more interesting to make the deployer turn. Because if we check out, we have scene.world and we have this move deployer function, but only for one reason. And this is because up here I've added in a small line off cam. When we are using the scene builder, we can check out that there's actually an interface that we have, and create already has the create scene builder, which implements this interface, or actually the ponder scene builder, which implements this interface and extends it, but that's okay. And this is kind of like creates util function, quite similar to what I have, but it just implements a bunch more functions which are helpful to interact with create components. So what I've done is I've renamed this to builder and then introduced the scene variable here, which is just the create scene builder. So what I have now is I have functions here to move the deployer. So if you check out, if I go into the world, I have this move deployer function inside of here, and I can just pass in the deployer position. I can now say how far I want to move this deployer. And for now, I want to move it 0.8 blocks into the direction of the bell, and I want to do this over 16 ticks. And then we need to ring the bell. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna put this into a function just called power bell or something like this. Okay, and now we can just remove this code up here and just call it power bell. We're gonna pass in the scene, we're gonna pass in the bell post, then the wiring section, then the redstone lamp. And then let's put it into correct indentation. And then we're gonna do this when our deployer has hit the bell. Next step to do is just to run scene.world.move deployer, deployer pos, and then we're gonna move it backwards again over the path of 16 ticks. We're gonna wait for 16 ticks. And then after we have wait for 16 ticks, our scene is basically done. And one last thing I want to add in here is I want to have the hand crank actually turn. We can use the hyper function apply kinetic speed add. We can pass in the scene, the utility, our contraption, and the speed. I'm just gonna use 16. And when we are finished, so down here after powering the bell, I'm just gonna put it back to 0. And then we're gonna idle. So now let's point to the bell. You can see, okay, this is the desk bell. You right click it and something appears. Then we're gonna show off the redstone. The desk bell will produce a redstone signal when pressed. Okay, and now the contraption is gonna be there and it looks fine. So yes, if you maybe have not gotten anything, write a comment, join my Discord, ask me on there. And also feel free to check out the GitHub again. The mod template is linked in the description. And yeah, I hope this tutorial helped you writing Ponder scenes. And we will see us in the next modding tutorial then. So please, in the comments, write a suggestion or your wishes on what I should make the next tutorial. And yes, see you in the next video.